in his history will show that your contribution to physical culture by coming up with the X3 bar is well deserved. So before we start telling people about X3 bar, and I'm going to tell everybody something right now. You have to be open-minded when we start talking about this, because you're going to think you know what this is, and you don't. How did you come up with this? What was the deal behind it?
So my background is in bone density research. I invented a device that puts axial compression. So like this is the axis of bone, the length of the bone. And we put force through that bone in positions where we would naturally absorb high impact forces. So like you trip and fall, you protect yourself. The big issue here. If I look at what people can do with full range of motion, which means you're limited by your weaker range of motion. Hence, we call it the weaker range. So like studies on bench press sticking point, this is all part of the same discussion. So when we look at that, and then we look at what a human is capable of at extension. So like when I'm in a bench press, when my arm is out here, what am I capable of with a 120-degree angle of inclusion, upper to lower arm, is incredible. It's actually 7 times greater than what I'm capable of in a weaker range of motion. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, we're missing out. We are leaving the gains at the gym. We're not getting it. And anything like that. I lifted, never really got much results out of it. I was a pretty average guy. And then I started reading about Westside Barbell and how they would add bands and chains to some of their lifts. And then there was a great study done by Professor Anderson with Cornell athletes, and they divided the athletes into 2 different groups. One group they used less resistance than they would normally use, and then added bands. So let's say they had X weight here, and then at extension, let's say 1.2x or 1.3x. So hyper-loading the strong range and offloading the weak range. They grew 3 times the amount of muscle. I should say strength. I mean, muscle and strength go together, but 3 times the amount of strength in that given period of time compared to the control group, who was just doing their regular training, tested pre to post.
Right.
So ultimately, I look at both groups were lifting weights. The difference is one group added bands. So, and I take that, and this is another thing, because people will look at the science of X3 and go, well, it's not this, and they pull one sentence out of one study, and they don't know how to read scientific documentation, because there's a reason I have multiple references. It's because I'm pulling things from different places. So then when you look at my research out of London, and you take the 2 and you kind of cross-observe, forget the weight. We need more variance.
Yes.
We need
it's actually I still want to stay strong. Right. But we always talk about, oh, I want to train smarter. You want to train smarter? It's called the X3 bar. Yeah. Because you can be as strong as you want, but in the weak places where you normally injure yourself, it's dynamic for you.
Yeah, the weight drops off where you're at risk.
It's so beautiful.
And then so very quickly, so it comes with the 12-week program. I think on week 3, I don't remember, I filmed it a couple weeks ago. Well, more than 12 weeks ago. So we get into what's called diminishing range of fatigue. So you do however many reps you do, and then you go to fatigue in the strong range. And then you ratchet back and do reps in the mid-range, because you can't get to the strong range anymore, because that's a very high weight.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then you
actually take the muscle to several levels of failure.
In one set.
Yes, in one set, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not letting a massive amount of blood into recovery, because the problem with pausing, like if you're doing the board press, you pause and your body immediately starts to recover from that.
Right.
So it's really not as intense an experience as this is. This is absolute fatigue of the muscle in all ranges of motion simultaneously.
I love it.
Yeah, or in degrading ranges of motion, we call it diminishing range. And the effect, basically you need 1 set per body part. That's what I did for a year when I prototyped it. Because even though I looked at the data, I thought this just really seems too good to be true. I experimented with once I got the prototype built. Oh, I should say that at first I was just going to write a book about ultra heavy band training. Like, go find somebody that'll make you bands that'll hold 200, 300, 400, 500 pounds and train with the bands. The problem is a band wants to conform, right? So it stretches and it doesn't form a shape of a bar. And so your wrists get twisted and your ankles, if you're deadlifting with a 400 pound band at stretch, your ankles are bending inward, and your ankle does not like lateral force.
Right.
So what happens is you have neural inhibition, which instantly starts shutting muscle off. So like when you're uncomfortable, when you're lifting something, you're getting a crummy workout or not one at all because muscles are beginning to shut off. And so within 2 days of experimenting with these heavy bands, I'm like, all right, this is not going to work. I got to develop an Olympic bar, which, so I can grab here and grab here if I'm going to do an overhead press.
Right.
Where it can rotate. So the X3 it's an Olympic bar, a full steel Olympic bar. I coated it in rubber. A lot of people don't understand that the whole thing is actually tested the same spec that like a Rogue, Olympic bar is, which has some significant cost behind it, which people look at it and go, why is it so expensive? It's an Olympic bar. And then the bands are not like the goofy little rehab bands that you can find at Walmart. These are hundreds of pounds at extension to deliver. Not only are you getting more force, but you're getting more force at more repetitions. So
and at appropriate points in the muscle contraction. And this is the interesting thing about it.